Welcome back to Expand the Visual. As always, I'm Jordan Taylor, author of one of the greatest books about education that's ever been written, How to Wash Your Brain, Rote Learning Secrets for Homeschool, High School, and Beyond. Why is it so great? Because it's a small book, easy to read, but it's full of wisdom about how you learn, how you can make your life better, how you can change your outputs by changing your inputs. This applies to everybody, not just kids in school. But today we are talking about kids in school because unfortunately, you send your kid to school for them to get better, for a good outcome, right? But a lot of times, teachers end up harming your kids where they were supposed to help them. But don't worry, I'm going to help you out. At the end of this video, you're going to have 4 tips that will help your kid or yourself become a better public speaker. 4 tips at the end of this video. So let's start with the problem. Before that, I want to tell you a little story, and this is kind of personal for me, not something that I share with a lot of people. So I never had a problem with public speaking, but one day I was in community college. I was kind of in that phase of I'd just gotten out of high school and I'm stumbling around in the world, don't really know what to do. So of course, what do? You go to community college. And I was taking a couple different classes, just a kind of selection of things that I liked. One of them was some business and the law, that was the class I signed up for. And another one of them was filmmaking. So like I said, I had never had a problem with public speaking, or at least I thought that I didn't. And I remember sitting in this business and the law class, and they were going around to all the people through all the rows and saying, the typical kind of thing where it's like, hey, introduce yourself, tell us some things about you and why you took this class. So it got to me, and I said, hey, I'm Jordan Taylor, and I took this class because I'm hoping to start my own business with my friend. Now, at the time, my friend and I were working on a comic book that we later published. And the teacher said, oh, wow, that's so cool. What kind of business? And I don't know what it was like. You have to imagine, or you have to understand, at that time, comic books had a different stigma. Now comic books are popular. Back then, they had this huge nerd stigma. And I think it was, I hadn't expected her to ask me that. And I just felt this, I don't know what to call it, but this judgment from the group. Probably imagined in my own head, but I still felt it, all right? This imagined judgment from the group that if I told them that I was working on a comic book, somehow that would make me look like a fool. And this kind of mental glitch sent me into a panic attack, which I had never had before. So I didn't even understand what was going on. I couldn't even speak. I was having a panic attack. And then that panic attack got associated with speaking in public. So later that day, this made it even worse. So I've got this fresh panic attack. I walk over to my next class, and it's this filmmaking class. And the teacher decides to have everybody introduce themselves, say a little bit about yourself, and also why you are taking the class. But instead of just saying it in public, she also, because it was a filmmaking class, had a camera trained right on each person. So needless to say, this caused me to have another panic attack. So somewhere out in the world, there is footage of me at 19 years old having this panic attack on camera. So not a pleasant story to tell, but it's very relevant for what we're going to talk about next. There is a trend in education right now that is harming your kids and not helping them. And that trend is giving them an opt-out. Now, this is presented as a good thing. Hey, we're going to give your kids some options, okay? All kids are different, so we're going to give them these different options. It's going to be great at the end of the day. But I like the example of public speaking because it shows you how basically the teachers in the school are not doing their job. So a lot of times kids have to give a presentation. They say, okay, go research this topic, then you'll get up in front of the class, you'll have a little slideshow, all right, and you'll talk about it for like 2 to 5 minutes. That's great practice, because that's a skill that's going to carry them forward. Public speaking is one of those foundational skills for success. But the new trend is that, some kids feel anxious or nervous talking in front of people, which actually it's most kids and most people. Most people have a fear of public speaking. So since some kids have this fear, we'll give them options. And sometimes those options might look like, instead of getting up and standing in front of the class and speaking, they'll be given the option to, maybe they record it on a video, like what I'm doing right now. But then it gets even more watered down, like, oh, maybe you'll do a few extra slides and that'll count instead of your presentation. Excuse me, what? They're getting a grade for giving a presentation, but they don't even give it? Or here's my favorite one of all. The teacher will say, just come over to my desk when it's your turn to give your presentation, and you can just whisper it to just me. How is that getting them prepared to give any sort of presentation, okay? So what's happening is your kids are, because of the opt-out thing, they're being made weaker. They're not being made stronger. Okay, when they get in the real world, they're not going to have all these different options. The option is going to be, hey, go forth confidently and give a presentation, or don't do it. All right, don't do it at all. That might make them miss out on a job opportunity. It might make them miss out on a business opportunity, or it might just, disable them from following their passion. Anyway, the point of school is your kid can't do something, you send them to school, they teach them to do it, they come home, and now they can do it. I thought that was the point of school, but apparently it's opt-outs. That's the point. So, as a teacher, what I do, every year we memorize poems, and then each student has to get up and recite that poem in front of the class, and there's no opt-out. Oh my God, aren't I a terrible person? What about their feelings of anxiety? Won't they, get undue stress and trauma from having to present in front of the class? I don't think so. What I think is they get exposure to something they're uncomfortable with, and this makes them stronger. However, I would never ever do this to somebody without giving them the tools to succeed. Now see, back when I had that panic attack, I didn't have these 4 tools to help me succeed, or these 4 mindset tricks to help me succeed. So, I can identify the nervous kids pretty easily, because as soon as you say, hey, we're going to recite a poem in front of the class, you can just look and tell the ones that start to kind of ball up. All right? So then I approach those kids and I ask everybody else, hey, are you feeling nervous? Anybody nervous about this? And if they say yes, then I approach them as well. And we work on, over time, while we're memorizing the poem, these 4 things. So what are they? Okay. First, you have to understand that when you feel nervous or anxious about speaking in front of a crowd, speaking in public, that you're basically getting the fight or flight response. The symptoms are going to feel like this. Heart rate's going to increase. Your breath might start to come a little bit shallower, a little bit quicker, and shorter, more in rapid succession. So your breathing's going to change, your heart rate's going to change by elevating. And then another key sign is that your palms will get sweaty, right? Your armpits might get sweaty, but definitely your palms. What happens is when adrenaline is released in your system, you get this increased conductivity on your skin from sweat, sweaty palms. Okay, these are the classic nervous symptoms. So what I do now when I have to public speak, because I haven't got rid of that nervousness ever since my panic attack, is that as soon as these symptoms start, that's when I know I have to do something. The first thing I can do is what's called checking in. I got this from a book called Gorilla Mindset, but it works very well. I've done it myself a lot. So all checking in is, instead of projecting out into the future and worrying about your presentation, you check in on what's happening right now. And it's very simple. I'm in a room. The color of the walls are brown. I'm wearing a red hoodie. I'm speaking into a computer. What these things are doing is they're taking away the worry out of your mind by just focusing on what's actually happening right now. And when that happens, I tend to find that I go, hey, this isn't such a big deal. It's a room full of humans. I'm a human. I'm just focusing on these mundane details, and it's helping to ground me, okay? So that's strategy number 1. Check in with your surroundings, with your environment. It sounds silly, but try it. It'll work. The second tip, I heard this from Dr. Jordan Peterson. This is a great tip that has helped tons of kids. The most nervous kids in my class, this is what they get the most out of and are able to succeed. All right? What you do when you're nervous about speaking in public is you don't pay attention to individuals. Instead, you're kind of trying to keep track of the reaction of the crowd, but by trying to find or keep track of the whole crowd, you're really not paying attention to anyone. So then your imagination starts to come in again, and those negative voices start saying, oh my God, they probably think you're stupid. They probably think a comic book business is stupid. Things like that. These start to creep in. But instead, what you need to do is focus on one individual, and then you get a reaction. Hey, how they're reacting, that's a general kind of overview of probably how the rest of the crowd is reacting. And then you don't want to just stare at them. It's a little creepy. So you just kind of look, and then you move to another person. And you look and see how they're reacting as you're speaking, and then move to another person slowly. But you're not scanning back and forth the entire crowd. That will make you feel way more nervous. Focusing in on one person at a time, that's your tip number 2, all right? You'll get the reaction. You'll see, hey, am I boring this person? Do they think this is silly? Am I getting an interest level because they're maintaining eye contact with me? You get all that information, and you only have to focus on one person at a time. Great tip. All right, so that was your second tip. The third one is learn how to breathe. When I described the symptoms, I said that your breath will become a little bit more shallow, your heart rate will increase. Well, the way you start to calm that down is taking controlled deep breaths. So one way to do that is, instead of breathing from up here, breathe more down from your belly, okay? So feel your belly button going out and coming back in. As you breathe in, it should go out. And as you breathe out, it should go back in. What that does is it allows you to breathe from your diaphragm. So you're really taking deep breaths. And the ultimate thing that this is going to happen is it's going to have an effect on your nervous system where you start to calm down. And it's going to send extra oxygen to your brain, which is going to help you to calm down and help you to think sharper. All right, so you'll be quicker on your feet. Both things that you want to happen when you're public speaking. All right, and then finally, the fourth thing is just practice a lot, okay? If you're trying to remember what you're going to say, at the same time you're trying to keep track of the crowd, this might be overwhelming for your brain, okay? Instead, practice, if you can, beforehand to where what you're saying is almost automatic. Then your mental space is freed up a little bit to pay attention to, hey, how is the crowd receiving this? Pay attention to your breathing and help calm you down by remembering to breathe deeply. All these things, you need the mental space to be able to do it. If you haven't practiced your routine or at least an outline of what you're going to say, then it's going to put you in a bad spot. You don't want to be there. So that's your fourth tip, is practice, practice, practice to where you know your material cold. All right? Now I'll give you one more little extra thing at the end. But the point is, we send our kids to school to learn to get better. And these are 4 things that any teacher could teach to a kid instead of giving them this watered-down opt-out menu. I mean, come on, whispering into a teacher's ear, standing by the side of their desk. I'm sorry, that's not preparing your student for life. That's not preparing this kid for life. All right? It's just keeping them soft and weak and feeble when really we want them to go through the fire. So it's amazing to see the look on these kids' faces when they get up and they recite the poem in front of the class, and I just look at them and say, did you think you could do that? And when they are smiling while they say, no, I didn't think I could do that. It's the best feeling in the world, not only for them, but for me. So at the end, I always say two things. I say, hey, great job, and you didn't die. And they kind of laugh a lot of times and go, no, you're right, I didn't die. But it feels like you're going to die beforehand, all right? But consciously, we know we're not going to. Then once that kid has the experience of getting up in front of their peers, killing it, and not dying, they're stronger and they're more prepared to do it again, and do it again, and do it again. But the kid that's sitting there whispering, or the kid that adds a couple extra slides to their presentation, they don't have that level of confidence. They will go on to the next grade and still think that they're going to die. And that, my friends, is edugenic harm. That's what we want to avoid. So, if you want to be on the lookout for this and other types of edugenic harm and know how to do it right instead of doing it wrong, pick yourself up a copy of How to Wash Your Brain, Rote Learning Secrets for Homeschool, High School, and Beyond. There's a link in the show notes, but also you can just look up How to Wash Your Brain on Amazon. It's only $9.69 for a paperback copy. Best deal in the world. You can't beat this deal. Just try. See you next time.